We go to Lucas Tomlinson, who joins us live at the White House for more on the president's reaction to Putin's aggression. Lucas.
Good morning, Julian. Last night, Ukraine's president says Russia launched its largest drone attack of the war, and President Trump now told reporters he's considering sanctioning Russia.
You've talked before about putting more sanctions on Russia. Is that something you're considering more seriously?
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that.
And according to The Economist, Russia is now mass producing those drones. What once took a month to crank out, it now takes less than 3 days, thanks to help from China and Iran. And NATO Secretary General says Russia now makes 3 times more artillery rounds than the entire U.S. and European continent combined. And after the bombardment of Ukraine this weekend, Trump went further when he returned to the White House last night, posting on Truth Social, "I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. He is needlessly killing a lot of people. I'm not just talking about soldiers." Then he turned his attention on Zelensky, saying, likewise, President Zelensky is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. And that drew a rebuke from Republican Congressman Don Bacon, a former Air Force general, who said in a statement, "The first half of this message is perfect. The rest is dumb. Trump is attacking President Zelensky while Putin bombs Ukrainian cities, and it is misguided. Moral ambiguity while one nation invades another is hurting Trump's credibility. Putin is making a mockery of Trump, and Trump keeps attacking Zelensky." And during recent talks in Istanbul, a Russian diplomat told his Ukrainian counterpart Russia's in this for the long haul and reminded him that Russia fought a 21-year war against Sweden. That war ended in 1721, Julie.
Lucas Tomlinson, thank you so much. Bill.
Well, Julie, at least 12 people were killed in that huge air attack after Russia fired hundreds of drones and missiles at Ukraine in the middle of these negotiations. It all happened hours before both sides completed a major prisoner swap, exchanging 1,000 people on each side. Alex Hogan is joining us live following the story for us in London today. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Bill. Ukraine is reporting a record-breaking number of aerial attacks from Russia, once again citing that this was the largest drone attack since Russia's full-scale invasion began in 2022. So the Ukrainian Air Force says as many as 355 drones were fired just today, and it follows nearly 300 Russian drones that had been launched the night before. Authorities say 12 people died in the attacks, including children, and dozens of others were injured. The neighboring countries exchanging attacks and the largest prisoner swap in their 3 years of war. The countries traded more than 1,000 soldiers, roughly 300 on Friday, Saturday, and again on Sunday, as tearful families welcomed them home. Despite this rare moment of cooperation, the violence continues on both sides this week. Russia says its forces shot down 128 Ukrainian drones today over 12 regions. Following President Donald Trump's comments last night, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov today said that Russia is grateful to President Trump for his assistance in organizing and launching this negotiation process. Meantime, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Russia is acting with a complete sense of impunity and that these new attacks need to be met with new sanctions. Bill.
Alex Hogan live in London for us this morning. Alex, thanks. Julie?
For more on this, let's bring in Fox News contributor Dan Hoffman, a former CIA chief of station. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Great to see you. So, first of all, President Trump has very strong words for Vladimir Putin, and he does make mention of the fact that he's known the guy a very long time, yet he's surprised by Vladimir Putin's actions. Vladimir Putin is a different man, perhaps, president, than he was in President Trump's first term, and he seems that he will not be held back by this president when it comes to attacking Ukraine. Why haven't the stronger sanctions, do you believe, why haven't they gone into place, and how urgent do you think that needs to happen to prevent further attacks?
Well, I think President Trump has said that he was holding back on implementing those sanctions to give diplomacy a chance. Secretary Rubio, when he was testifying last week, spoke to that effect as well. What I would emphasize here is that Vladimir Putin is acting rationally. I'd encourage President Trump. I'm sure he's talking to Director of CIA John Ratcliffe, and I'm sure he can get a leadership profile of Vladimir Putin. For Putin, Ukraine is an existential threat, not because Ukraine represents a military threat to Russia, but because what scares Putin the most is democracy. And he could never allow a country like Ukraine with a sizable Russian-speaking population to build a democracy and enjoy commercial ties and strategic ties to the West, to Europe and the United States.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What would you advise the president to do next? And what message can he give to Zelensky? Because he does say that Zelensky's words are not helping the measure. It's great that they've agreed on this 1,000 prisoner swap, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we've got a peace deal on the table. I mean, Zelensky agreed to the 30 days, but Putin is not agreeing to a peace deal unless Zelensky gives what Putin wants.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think if you look back at Vladimir Putin's history, it's pretty violent. His term as president over roughly 25 years ago began with launching a war on Chechnya. He has launched massive cyber attacks on the United States, including solar winds during President Trump's first term, invaded Georgia, continues illegally to occupy parts of Georgia. And, of course, this war on Ukraine, which essentially began in 2014 when Russia illegally annexed Crimea. So the key to dealing with Russia, I would argue, is leverage. And we have some leverage, economic leverage and military leverage. And the question for the United States is whether we pursue those secondary sanctions that Senator Lindsey Graham has warmed up in the bullpen, ready to go, and whether we provide Ukraine with additional military arms to defend themselves, air defense, as well as offensive weapons.
Here's President Trump saying that he is absolutely considering Russia sanctions. Let's watch.
You mentioned you're unhappy with President Putin. You've talked before about putting more sanctions on Russia. Is that something you're considering more through?
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that.
And speaking of talks, okay, so you've got talks with the president and Putin not necessarily going well, but President Trump says that his talks on Iran are going well. Let's listen to that, and I'll have your reaction.
Very importantly, we had some very good talks with Iran yesterday and today, and let's see what happens. But I think we could have some good news on the Iran front having to do with nuclear. We've had some very, very good talks with Iran, and I don't know if I'll be telling you anything good or bad over the next 2 days, but I have a feeling I might be telling you something good. We've had some real progress, serious progress.
Dan, now my question to you is, do you think that progress possibly means to get Iran to stop fueling the war on terror when it comes to the Houthis, to Hezbollah, to Hamas? I mean, that's where Iran needs to reel it in, especially when it comes to their weapons development program.
Right. We haven't quite got to that level of negotiation yet.
No.
We're still kind of stuck on the fact that Iran is a nuclear threshold state. Iran wants to be able to enrich uranium.
Yep.
According to their foreign ministry this morning, Iran is saying that's a red line, that they won't even agree to a 3-year hiatus where they would not agree to enrich uranium. For the United States, that's our chief demand. So we're kind of at loggerheads on that one, and we haven't gotten to Iran's ballistic missile program or their support to proxy terrorists. This is going to be a wickedly complex challenge for the United States as we continue to deal with the war in Gaza, which is linked up with the Iranian nuclear program, negotiating a way forward there. And Israel's got their Air Force and other military poised to attack Iran in the event that these negotiations fail.